action, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why it keeps doing that, but I will admit I am getting sick and tired of that. I'll let this be the last time for trying to stream. Don't even think. If it crashes once again, then that's gonna be it for Don't Even Think, and then I'll probably move on to either Ultimate Storm 4 or maybe some other game in the meanwhile, just because I am getting kind of frustrated with, these sudden crashes. I will get back to reading some more stories from my werewolf book once again. It's just I gotta once again post links to my werewolf live streams once again. Getting getting my one section ready. Actually, while we're waiting. Oh, that's kind of creepy. I only have 101, dang. Oh wow, that skin actually looks beast. Ooh, it's a little bit Kurama, a little bit. Ooh. I won't lie, a lot of these skins, they look pretty badass. Okay, but enough lollygagging. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, apologize for the second time for my live stream crashing. If it does it once again, I might do something else. Either, like I said, either Ultimate Ninja Storm 4 or just another game. We'll have to wait and see, because I do want to continue live streaming. It's just, again, like, I won't lie, I am getting pretty ticked off that the stream keeps crashing. I'm just deleting the old links from the other places. But I still hope everyone's having a good evening, though. Ugh. Ow. Oh yeah, I did forget to mention, the first time I was trying to upload our live stream for this is, even though this game is free to play, it does have free to play aspect games where, they make up the free to play with their microtransactions, what we just saw with those skins. But I won't lie, some of those skins did look really good for the werewolf. I will not lie, a lot of those skins look really clean. It's just, a shame that I don't have enough in-game currency to buy those. It's a shame about that, but it is what it is right now. Maybe if I keep playing this game, I'll earn enough money to start buying skins. Paste. Let's see. Don't even think. Or saving. There's that. Oh. Don't even think. Save that. to ingest. Oops, stay. Can wait for all this. Okay, now I can move to get the thumbnail. Once the thumbnail's done, I can get back to reading more stories about werewolves while we wait. Okay, that's done. Just gotta get a link to the live stream. Don't strain yourself too much. There we go. Yes. I like how that message pops up even though all I'm just doing is just sitting in the lobby. Of course I'm being sarcastic. Delete. Alright. Good thing it takes a while to find a match as the werewolf. That time I was a little mix of a little bit sarcastic, but also a little bit of truthfulness, because I'm still switching out the links and stuff. Alright, there we go. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is the final attempt at streaming this game before I call it quits for Don't Think. I was about to say Don't Think Twice. Actually, is this game? I keep forgetting like enunciations and stuff. Don't even think. Alrighty. I was about to confuse this for the opening for Kingdom Hearts 3. Or for the main theme for Kingdom Hearts 3, I should say. Alrighty. Hopefully we can continue this go around without any hiccups. I'm hoping, because third time's its charm, right? Alrighty. So now that that's taken care of, let's get back to reading stories about werewolves. Here's something about Little Red Riding Hood. Some of these stories, known as contes in French, I don't really know if that's how you pronounce it, contes, contes, drew the attention of serious collectors of folk tales. The French writer of fairy stories and collector of legends, Charles Perrault, quickly recognized the importance of some of the old wolf tales that were still circulating around the end of the 17th century. In 1697, he published a collection of folk tales, including one that had a werewolf theme about a speaking wolf that could create mayhem. Whether or not this was based on an actual folk tale is unclear, but it contains elements that were currently in many French werewolf tales of the period. It dealt with a petite filly, a pretty young girl. I have no idea why they worded it like that. It's weird. Little more than a child who had to journey through a dark forest in order to take some groceries to her grandmother who was ill. The image of a small girl in the dark forest were stock characteristics of many tales concerning werewolves and held echoes of the Jean Grenier case. I'm assuming it's Jean, might be Jean, but I don't know why I'm saying Jean since it's Jean, but I'm imagining since it's French, since this is based around the French, I'm assuming that's pronounced Jean Grenier case, which at that point was only 80 years old. In order to journey through the cold, dank wood, the little girl put on her favorite garment, a cape of red material. On her way among the trees, she was approached by a wolf that suddenly emerged from the undergrowth. It engaged her in conversation, questioning her closely about her errand and destination. From her, it learned the exact location of her grandmother's house, and that the old lady was both ill and housebound. However, it did not attack her due to the presence of some woodsman nearby, but it too expressed concern for the old lady's well-being and announced that it would visit her, but suggested that it would take a slightly different path than the little girl. This plan was dressed up as a game, a race to see who would get to the house first. The little girl took the longer path, and on the way she became distracted by picking flowers and watching the woodland creatures. Okay, now that that's... Oof. I was about to say, yes, I saw a parachute, but that wasn't the case. Oh, that's another werewolf. Let's see, I'm gonna check this house over here. about that. Alright, first kill. We got another minute before nightfall. Alright, we got 30 seconds before I transform. I'm surprised that person was by themselves. Here we go. Alright, wolf time. There's the other werewolf. And we have a whole huge area to cover. You know, for a map that only has 15 people, I'm surprised I'm having a hard time finding anyone. Let's see. I want to check that cabin up there, but odds are I'm thinking probably no one's there. Or if there were, they're already gone by now. Can I climb through this? Nope. Crap, I just gave myself away if someone's hiding in there. Yep, people were here, but they're not here anymore. Whew, I was running fast. No one was here yet either. Huh. Whoa. I'm gonna die. Dang it, they had silver bullets. Darn it, they had silver bullets. Ugh. Alright, let's see if we can actually get to a second game without the game crashing. In the meantime, let's get back to reading about Little Red Riding Hood, shall we? Continu Continuing up from where I last read off. Okay, I was just waiting for the music to drop. Meanwhile, the wolf had already reached the cottage, and mimicking the voice of the little girl, it persuaded the old woman to open the door and let it in, whereupon it leapt on the grandmother in her bed and devoured her, climbing into the bed and put on the old lady's nightgown and waited for the little girl to arrive. When she did, the wolf pretended to be the bedridden old lady and invited her in. There was some conversation between the two concerning the hugeness of the grandmother's eyes and largeness of her mouth and the sharpness of her teeth, but in the end the wolf revealed who it really was, and leaping on the little girl, completely devouring her. There is no happy ending to this tale. It is, however, not hard to recognize the children's story of Little Red Riding Hood. Man, to think that Little Red Riding Hood's story had such messed up origins, which most of us have read at one time or another, although this version of the tale is known as Le Grand Mal Garou, which Perrault collected somewhere in the region of southern France near the Spanish border. It may have its source in the tales of Giles Gardner, The Werewolves of Polygamy, and Jean Grenier, stretching back for more than a century. The wolf attacks both a little girl and a bedridden old lady, both defenseless victims, and both suggestive of the allegations made in several of the werewolf trials. Indeed, it is quite possible that in France, Little Red Riding Hood started out as a particularly gruesome werewolf tale. In fact, in another French version of the same story, the little girl first encounters the wolf in its human form, and therefore feels no fear. Of course, it is weird that in the fairy tale, she does not find a speaking wolf either strange or frightening. Perrault was careful to constantly keep the wolf in its lupine form, and not as a hybrid creature for maximum effect. The French version, which may be the oldest, ends unhappily with the death of Little Red Riding Hood in the jaws of the wolf. Other variants of the same tale, however, had a much happier outcome. In the German variant, the ending is much more satisfactory from the human perspective. This tale was published in the Brothers Grimm famous collection of German folk tales, mainly for children, Kinder und Harsmärchen, probably butchered the name, I apologize, in 1812. This story is known as Rotkäppchen or Red Cap, which give us our more familiar angelic-sized tale of Red Riding Hood. The German version parallels the French, but only up to a point, for in this narrative the little girl cries attracted the attention of a passing huntsman or a nearby woodcutter, who rushes in to save her. Using a knife or an axe blade, he slit open the wolf's belly and thus freed Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. In a rather confused development of the story, the wolf seemed to be mysteriously asleep throughout this operation, having gorged itself, and so they replaced the escaped victims with large stones, which the grandmother sewed into the creature's stomach. When the wolf awoke, it attempted to escape, but the weight of the stone dragged it down and killed it. The German ending was therefore much more satisfactory from the storyteller's standpoint. This more wholesome element was developed and expanded in Britain during Victorian times, when mainly grisly old European folk tales were sanitized into children bedtime stories for popular consumption, and it is perhaps one of these versions with which most of us are familiar. Whether it was based on a genuine folk tale or not, the story of Red Riding Hood certainly reflected a number of elements, both explicit and implicit, which were current and old werewolf tales, many of which dated from a time long before Perrault. The color of the girl's cape or cloak is the color of blood, suggestive of a potential victim. She must have been very naive if she is led astray by the wiles of a talking wolf, which takes the place of the role of the devil. And of course, this is the notion of a demonic force masquerading firstly in the guise of a human and later in a destructive animal form. All these images have traditions and associations that stretch well back in prehistoric times. It has also been suggested that the tale of Red Riding Hood may have political connotations, and that it may in fact be an old Hagu, Hag, Huguenot, Huguenot fable. Probably butcher that name. I apologize once again. I'm going to be butchering a lot of names, so I'm going to be apologizing in advance for that. Although there is scant evidence for this, it was allegedly circulated following the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1572 as a disguised symbol of the brutality and savagery of the French monarchy. The color red in the little girl's cape symbolizing the color of freedom. The red caps were sometimes worn by Huguenot patriots as a symbol of their independence from Catholicism and from the largely Catholic-controlled machinery of state. The idea of the Huguenot movement being swallowed up by the Catholic monarchy may have formed the inspirational bias for the tale. Although this may be stretching the idea of the werewolf story a bit too far, there is little doubt that the shadow of the wolf still lay dormant in some corner of the French consciousness, just waiting to be aroused. But it's not just... just make sure I'm not skipping anything. Yep. But it's not just Gaelic folktales, politically motivated or not, in which the werewolf appeared. The plethora of French trials had attracted interest not only from those who collected such tales, but among national thinkers as well. The times were changing, and a new mood of scientific inquiry was becoming the norm in much of Europe. Old beliefs and superstitions, which had lain unquestioned for centuries, were now coming under the searchlight of more rigorous investigation. The question now arose, if the likes of Giles Gamer, the werewolves of Poligny, and John Grenier were not in fact werewolves at all, and the general conscience suggested that they might not have been, as is evidenced by the more yet sentence passed by Grenier by the senior court in Bordeaux. Then what were they? Several leading physicians weren't as like how we knew them as kids, where like Red Riding Hood, Red Riding Hood and her grandmother escaped the clutches of the werewolf, of the big bad wolf, thanks to the huntsman. Like unfortunately, her and her grandmother did get killed by the werewolf, or I keep saying werewolf, by the wolf at the end of the original story, and how a lot of these stories do end a lot more gruesome than the fairy tale versions. So that's just kind of food for thought, thinking about how some of our favorite fairy tales growing up as kids, had potentially had some messed up origins. Well, let's see what else we can learn about werewolves. Let's see. Moon Goddess. Might look into that. Yeah, why not? Full moons. There was also another problem for such scientists and educated men to consider: the perceived connection between werewolves and the full moon. Although this is a slightly later idea than either Weir or Scott, this is little doubt that werewolf transformations were viewed in the 17th and 18th centuries as being supernaturally influenced by the waxing and waning of the moon. In the 19th and 20th centuries, this notion would be further developed, and the theme of man being turned into a wolf would seemingly be dependent upon the lunar phases. Although such an association never appeared in accounts of werewolf trials, why did the notion of transformation then become associated with the moon? Get back to that after this game. Oof. First victim, boys. Let's go. Alright, that guy was going for a box. Now I'm scared he was going to get some items. I wonder if he can see me. Playing Ring Around the Road with oh, nasty. 2 kills, boys. Let's go. There we go. Got 30 more seconds before I turn into a werewolf. Uh-oh. I wish you knew where those shots were coming from, dang. Ah, shoot. Ah, poop. Not now. Not now. Ooh, 3 kills. Let's go. Shoot! God dang it, he had to get silver bullets, and I was on a roll. Dang it. I just did that because I stopped my recording. I don't like it, or if I don't like a game that's being recorded on my console, I'll just do that to stop it. God dang it, I waited a whole, like, what, 10 minutes to get into that game? Man, that's bullcrap. Alrighty, getting back to full moons and werewolves. Actually, I need to find my drink because I'm starting to get thirsty. Okay, where was I on full moons? By the way, I hope you're all having a fantastic rest of your evening. Okay. So, getting back to full moons. The moon, of course, has a long association with mental stability. Indeed, our own words lunacy and lunatic, denoting mental illness or deterioration, have their own roots in la lune, the French word for the moon, originating from the name of the Roman goddess Luna. But where did such an association begin? The Greeks took a scientific notion of both the human body and illness, and the Roman gallon, would do a little later, divided it up into various humors, such as plagum, blood, and bile, each specific to a certain bodily part. The exact balance of these allowed the body itself to function in a normal state and ensured good health. If these went out of kilter, then illness resulted. For instance, too much blood in the body would engender a fever. The brain, if the brain was believed contained large amounts of moisture, the balance of which was essential to its proper function. This allowed a civilized and rational train of thought to remain in ascendancy, while other dark impulses were kept restrained. However, as with other bodily parts, the internal workings of the body might also be influenced by some outside agency. Nothing in the way in which the weak gravitational pull of the moon affected the tides of the oceans. Greek physicians assumed that it had a similar effect upon the moisture that the brain contained, and it might throw the delicate humoral balance out of line and allowed more savage and unwholesome lusts to come to the fore. The civilized man might be gradually transformed by the pull of the moon into a raging, irrational creature, a lunatic. Many Greek thinkers such as Aristotle and Hippocrates of Kos 460 to 370 BC renounced it as a fact. Indeed, so strong was the association that the Greek goddess Selene, one of the representations of the triple moon goddess, was identified with wild and unpredictable behavior, and was sometimes depicted as dancing through the woodlands in an unrestrained and bizarre manner. Taking the writings of Greeks as undeniable fact, Pliny the Elder, AD 23 to 78, brought such medical thinking to the Roman sphere. Interesting. What else can we learn about werewolves? Something interesting I wanted to read. Moon goddesses. Okay. Since we were talking about the moon goddesses, there was of course another aspect to the moon's influence. It has already been noted that the full moon was believed to invoke the goddess Selene, who was its divine embodiment. However, Selene was only one aspect of the risen moon. Indeed, she was only one part of a triple lunar goddess. Another incarnation of the same deity was the goddess Artemis, also known in the Roman world as Diana, who was associated throughout the ancient classical world with the hunt. The majority of her hunting, giving her connections with the moon, especially the full moon, was done at night, because this was also a time when a number of creatures hunted. Thus, those who were touched by the moon's rays the moon's rays, because Artemis was also connected to the moon, were seized with the hunting frenzy that characterized with the goddess herself. Oh, dang. It was noted even in ancient times that the moon's rays seemed to have an excitable effect on dogs, which were a hunting animal, and this was sometimes put down to the goddess's influence. The goddess stirred the animals' hunting instincts and made them restless. The same might be done to certain types of individuals, especially the weak-willed and sinful. Thus, those who were wretched and steeped in sin might be subject to the moon's rays as dogs were. This baleful influence was linked to yet another aspect of the goddess, the incarnation known as Luna. This gave us our word lunatic, to denote those whose behavior was either bizarre or unpredictable. Of course, no attempt was made to link such behavior to the distinct conditions under a full moon, except maybe for a change in the overall light. Although we are not absolutely certain, this may be partially responsible for changes in the behavior of certain animals. However, the wild and erratic behavior of the lunatics under the moon became associated with the savage characteristics of the werewolf, and it was assumed that the moon's rays might have an effect on a person and might actually trigger the transformation into the man-wolf. This rather dramatic idea would become more developed as writers in Hollywood movies turned their attention toward the werewolf theme. Interesting. I'm pretty sure a lot more research has been done connecting if people do more insane things versus when the full moon is full versus other times of the day or night. I'm pretty sure a lot more research has been done into that now that we're in the 21st century. Well, that's kind of interesting to hear about that. Alright, next article. Elements of a wolf. Let me rehydrate once again. My throat is getting awfully parched. Excuse me. Links between lunacy, werewolfism, and wretched and sinful individuals grew as the Enlightenment progressed. During the late 17th and 18th centuries, men of learning began to question ideas that had formerly been ignored by the church. Conditions such as demon possession, miracles, ghosts, vampires, and werewolves, seeking some sort of scientific or rational answer rather than attributing werewolfism to possession of the individual and possession by malign supernatural forces. Thinkers, followers of Weyer, began to associate it with madness, or at least with some form of mental abnormality. They discounted items such as magic belts, wolfskin robes, or even diabolic unguents and potions, and began to look for more natural reasons why this condition should have been brought about. What causes, they asked, might make an individual believe he or she was a ravening animal? Wolf connections. Although it is not proposed to give a detailed examination of connections and problems between feral children, and the notion of such fondlings had a profound influence on the perception of the werewolf. This came about in two ways. First, it blurred the distinction between man and animal to an even greater degree. Did the primal beast continue to lurk somewhere beneath the sophisticated veneer of even the most civilized man? And might it be called forth by environment or circumstance? In the 19th century, society struggled with this concept. The works of Charles Darwin from 1809 to 1882 were now challenging and continue to do so. The central tenets of the church teaching, by asserting that man, formerly believed to have been specifically created by God, was in fact not all that far removed from chimpanzees. Even during the late 17th and 18th centuries, explorers in places such as Borneo had described hairy or monkey-like men living in the forest. They may have been describing orangutans, was it possible that man could revert to his animalistic origins under certain circumstances? The second way in which the feral children influenced the werewolf perception was that it reinforced the idea that the condition was a curse or a misfortune. It is quite probable that many of these feral fondlings were either congenitally afflicted or perhaps retarded in some way, and that this had led to their abandonment in the wild by their parents. Their behavior in human company resulted from these deficiencies, and looks like I'm on again. Oh crap, where's my axe? Was this the same place I spawned in last time? Oh, first victim, boys. Let's go. Wait. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go hunting the other guy. Dang, that guy's probably long gone by now. Actually, he didn't even pick up the suitcase. Oh, it's another wolf. It's another werewolf. Okay. Bro, why aren't you without your axe? It's dangerous to go out alone, don't you know? No one was here either? Dang. Okay, we got about 45 seconds left before I become a werewolf. Oh, where's your axe? Give your axe, dude. I guess he just wants to wait it out until we become werewolves. Oh wow, all three of us. Ah shit, it's starting. It's starting. Okay, gotta let my stamina grow. Is it smart for all three of us to be attacking in the pack? Yep. Get my health back up. Oh, it's a supply drop. Would you just go down already? Alright. Do I dare try to look in here? Yep, but there was someone in here that already left. Ooh. Alright. Did I pick up someone's scent? There's two people over there.
Hey Sonic.
Hey Jordy, what's going on, my girl? Welcome back to the live stream. I once again apologize for the sudden abrupt end to the last couple of live streams. So far this has been going pretty good. This is my 4th game, I think, since I started this stream. Anyways, welcome back. How's your night going, Jordy?
It's okay.
Oh, come on, Wolf Brothers are already taking care of this guy, these guys. there's no humans around here. Two people left. I consider my stamina right now. Are they just howling to make themselves look cool? Alright, let's sniff them out. Uh-oh. Don's gonna be coming in a minute. Uh-oh. I will admit, I've never been in a game where the game lasts this long yet. I wonder what happens when Dawn comes.
I believe you.
Let's see. Get ready for evacuation. Where's the evacuation? Alright, follow my brethren's lead. There he is. Conserve stamina. Again, was he just doing that to make himself look cool? That was kind of ironically timed. Or coincidentally timed. Okay, now he's just doing that to show off. I don't see where they could possibly be trying to evacuate.
Yeah.
Hear a plane. They might have escaped. I mean, I love being a werewolf as much as the next guy, but man, this is getting ridiculous. the one I just went to. So I'll check this one. I'm trying to go to this heliport right here. So I'm pretty sure that's where the survivors have to go to in order to evacuate. Well, it was worth the shot. The farthest one, maybe? Dang. Oh, yep, by the last one. There you go, werewolf speed. Yeah, if they're gonna have a map this big, they should really put in more players. I'm just saying. I still have a ways to go before I get to that heliport. Or helipad. Oh, behind me! Oh, I see one of them way over there.
Go Sonic. What the heck? I'm confused. Did we stop those? Did we stop them? Oh, there's one more person. Okay, the helicopter's right there, but it made me think that the helicopter was over there for some reason. What the?
Yeah, I don't know either, Jordy. It's weird. There's one more survivor, but I don't know where the heck he is. But luckily I have my scent of smell here soon. Oh man, I'm out of stamina.
We really shouldn't be straying too far from the helipad. Okay, we do have one guy here. Okay. Aha. Yeah, let's go! Whoo, let's go! Not too shabby.
All right.
Huh, that's kind of interesting. Even during the day, we don't turn back to humans. We stay as werewolves once we first transform, we stay as werewolves. That's kind of interesting. Okay, waiting for the beat to drop once again. Okay, let's get back to learning more about werewolves, shall we? Werewolves in film. The idea of the victim with his or her dramatic transformation, usually under the moon's baleful influence, was of course ripe for commercial exploitation and was quickly taken up by Hollywood in the 1930s. Cinema was rapidly becoming one of the most popular forms of entertainment, and one of its most popular genres was horror. The classic movie Dracula, starring the sinister Bela Lugosi, together with Frankenstein, starring the Englishman William Henry Pratt, were among the leading moneymaker films of their day. In order to extend the genre and make more money, the film companies searched around for a new horror character, and they found it in the werewolf. In the 1930s, through to the early 1940s, one of the leading companies in the movie world was Universal Studios, and yeah, those guys have been around since forever, who had released both Dracula and Frankenstein to critical acclaim in 1931. Determined to repeat the success of these monster movies, they released Werewolf of London in 1935, but enjoyed only a modest success. Universal decided that it needed a real blockbuster if they were to repeat earlier successes. With little expense spared, they released The Wolfman. I've actually seen both the original Wolfman and the 2000 whatever remake with Benicio del Toro. I actually have 2 copies of the movie, and I really enjoyed both. Well, I think the Benicio del Toro one was a little bit better, but that's just my opinion and because of modern standards. Although I will admit, when I first saw The Wolfman when I was younger, I thought it was funny because back then I was still a kid, so I couldn't see R-rated movies alone, so my mom had to take me to see it or went to watch it with me, and I thought it was funny because there's a scene where when Lawrence first became a werewolf, he actually ripped off one of the huntsman's arms off of him, and I thought it was funny because to me, after he ripped off the huntsman's arm, because it looked like the huntsman was trying to shoot him with a pistol, after he flung the huntsman's arm into the air, it fired off another round, and I was thinking, oh, that poor huntsman's arm. He thought that the arm was still trying to fire around, even though, it was already severed, or it was still trying to shoot the wolfman, even though it was severed from its owner. That was just, and what I thought was funny, because when I was laughing my head off at this, the guy that was sitting a couple rows in front of me and my mother, he kind of looked towards me like, what the heck? Or he was thinking, what's wrong with that kid? That was just my mentality when I was younger. Or that's just what I was thinking when I was younger. But anyways, getting back to werewolves in film. Freddy, Dracula, critical acclaim, designed a real blockbuster. With little expense spared, they released The Wolfman in 1941, which brought the image of the werewolf to cinema audiences everywhere. There were problems, however. The film company had planned to use either Lugosi or Karloff, who had now become household names in the world of horror and beyond, in the central role, but both were committed elsewhere. The man Universal finally chose was cast in a slightly different vein, not a huge hulking figure or a sinister brooding presence. He was an actor of more moderate talent. His name was Creighton Chaney. I probably butchered the name, I apologize. And he was the son of legendary silent movie actor Lon Chaney. Perhaps recognizing his son's acting limitations, Lon had advised him not to take up film work. However, Creighton, I'm butchering the name, I apologize, was determined to make his career in the cinema and not one to discard a family connection. Changed his name to Lon Chaney Jr. after his father's death in 1931. Even though he was not an accomplished horror actor in the style of Lugosi or Karloff, he had a rugged, brutish look, which was coupled with almost childlike innocence. Such a combination suited the tone of the film and made him a hit. He was ideal as the figure of the cursed man, who was the film's central character. However, the Wolfman suffered a distinct disadvantage. The company's other two successes, Dracula and Frankenstein, had been based on classic books by Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley, with which at least part of the audience were familiar. Those who were not familiar could go and buy the novels and relive the excitement in their own homes. There was no real equivalent literary work associated with the werewolf, and so the film had to stand on its own plot on Chaney's performance. The scriptwriter was Clifford Sidomak, who came from an established horror screenwriting family in order to strengthen the plot. Universal introduced some folkloric elements, both real and contributed into the story. Although many of the alleged instances of werewolf activity occurred in France, in order to link the movie to Universal's other successes, the creature becomes largely confined to Germany and parts of Eastern Europe. It postulated the idea that a man might become a werewolf under the rays of the full moon, but only if he'd been bitten by another such creature. This, of course, had no bias in folklore, but fit in well with the idea of vampirism and promoted in the film Dracula. That's kind of interesting where if you get bitten by a werewolf, you turn into a werewolf came from. They borrowed elements from Dracula. That's kind of interesting. Natural sound. One second.
That is interesting.
I guess I'll just stick with natural sound. Where was I? Sidmark also introduced the idea that a werewolf could only be killed by a silver bullet, an idea that supposedly belonged to Romanian gypsy lore. It was nothing of the sort. Although werewolves did exist in Romania and Russian gypsy tradition, they were not a significant terror. Indeed, ordinary wolves were usually regarded with much more apprehension because it was believed that the werewolf still had the soul of a human being, which was good. French tradition, as had already been noted, was much more antipathetic towards the idea of the werewolf than gypsy society. That's kind of interesting to think that the French believed that the werewolf was this irredeemable monster, whereas in gypsy folklore they still believe that there was still good inside the werewolf in its human form over its werewolf counterpart. Let's see. Ordinary wolf. Oh, here we go. Although werewolves did exist in Romanian, Russian, Egyptian tradition, they were not significant terror. Indeed, ordinary wolves were usually regarded with much more apprehension because it was believed that Oh wait, the werewolf had a human soul being, which was good. French was already been noted, which were more anticipated than was awarded. Oh, but that of course did not fit well with the Universal Cinematic Catalog. Sid Mark also suggested that the werewolf could be repelled, as was the vampire, by showing it a crucifix or by drawing or carrying a protective pentagram, such as Romanian talisman. Again, there is no real bias for these in a Romanary tradition, but it certainly added to the dramatic atmosphere of the film, given a sort of mystical edge to the storyline. By the way, if you guys are joining in and you're wondering what I'm reading to you all, I am reading a book. It's called A Field Guide to Shapeshifters, Lycanthropes, and Man-Beasts, Werewolves. It's basically a book about werewolves. Because once again, in case you guys don't know, I am a huge werewolf fan. Okay, so getting back to where I was. There's no real bias for this in Romanary tradition, but it certainly added to the dramatic atmosphere of the film, given a sort of mystical edge to the storyline. The Wolfman established two main elements that would become part of the later werewolf tradition. First, it solidified the idea that the werewolf was often a victim of some fatal curse, which was activated as soon as the full moon or the new moon rose. Chaney's almost childlike innocence established him firmly as one living in terror of a terrible transformation, but who could do very little about it. Second, the victim would not fully become a wolf in the transformation. The nature of this being was, however, incredibly ferocious and feral, and owed nothing to its human origins, wholly reflecting the animalistic elements. In later films, the protagonist would often have no recollection of the events that occurred after transformation. There were, of course, a number of problems with this approach. The resolution of some of these was shown with dramatic effect by subsequent films. For example, what was the actual transformation? Was it possession by a wolf spirit in the style of voodoo or of Native American beliefs? What happened if the rays of the moon did not touch the individual? Would that prevent the transformation, or would he or she change anyway as soon as the moon had risen? Could the transformation actually be stopped by a cleric? All of these questions would form the basis of the movies that were to follow in the wake of the Wolfman. That does bring up some interesting stuff, because if we do look into the Wolfman, the Benicio del Toro one, when he first does become the Wolfman and he watches his father become a Wolfman as well, we see that they're both underground in catacombs. The father was, of course, behind the door into a catacomb, which he built in order to protect the residents of his mansion, of his manor, so that way he wouldn't go on a rampage and accidentally kill his family or, his servants. We see that they're both underground under these catacombs, yet when that full moon rises, even though there was clouds and stuff in the way, they both become wolfmen, even though the light of the full moon weren't touching them. So that basically what it signifies what this book was saying, how even though the full moon's light didn't touch them, they still became werewolves. So that's kind of interesting thing that they brought up. And I will admit, I am kind of working on a story that is in regards to, or that is about werewolves. So I do have to put this into consideration too. Along the way, I do have a way that I am working on it. Oh, cool, we're back. All right, I'll get back.
It makes sense to me.
I'll get back to it. I gotta remember I'm at the part where it says although vampire movies. Okay. All right, back to the game. But still, I think that's pretty interesting to learn about. Like I said, I'm just a huge fan of werewolves. I might have to get some more books on werewolves later. Okay, I need an... there we go. Alright, there's 24 people, or 24 humans, so that means there's 27 players altogether. Wait, do I want to risk it for the biscuit? Alright. Does that really count as a mic kill? Huh. That would count as a knockdown. Let's see, we gotta be careful because I'm betting the other people are gonna be armed now. Oh, no, 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 I'm gonna transform! Dang it! I have to go back, go find that,
Go Sonic.
wolf nut.